Hi everyone, it's Hannah here and it's our Q&A Monday again. And today's topic is related to VAT. There are actually quite a lot of people asking questions related to VAT, like should I register for VAT and when should I register and what do I need to do? And even how much does it cost to register VAT? So all sorts of questions. So first of all, VAT is a slightly different kind of tax than income tax and corporation tax, because there's a business tax or anything like your personal tax or corporation tax. They are income based. So you you submit the tax return at the end of the year and declare, self-assess what are the amount of tax to pay based on your profit or your income. But VAT is a kind of indirect tax. So what does that mean is it's something like if you are VAT registered, you're actually registered as a tax agent for the taxman, and what have you sell any goods or services, you charge a certain amount of VAT on behalf of the taxman. Then when you declare the VAT return, then you pay VAT to the taxman. So that is something indirectly paid on behalf of your customers. Okay, so that's slightly different. But if lots of people asking, do I have to register VAT? First of all, you need to ask yourself, is your type of service or products required to register VAT? I do work with quite a lot of medical professionals, mostly like services related to human health. This is not something you have to register VAT, because for healthcare services, the government wants it to be affordable. So if that's something related to restoring human health, that is exempt from the VAT. So that's exemption. That's what's the name of it. So it means you don't have to register VAT. But what if you do, like say you provide both healthcare service, but you also sell some equipment and you register VAT on that? Then you have the segregated type of service of goods. So for the healthcare service, you still keep it as exempt. But if you do sell the equipment as well, then you can register business VAT and declare charge VAT on the equipment sale, and then submit a VAT return regarding that. So that's how does it work. But for majority of other services or goods, then you might need to register VAT. The other thing first of all, you need to ask yourself, is your type of service or products required to register VAT? And second question is a threshold. So at the moment, the annual threshold for VAT registration is 85K for the 12 months. But what if you're under that? Under that, it's voluntarily. You can choose to register or not. But above that, and if your service is something need to register VAT, then it becomes an obligation. So there are some circumstances that's probably beneficial for you to register VAT anyway, even if you don't reach a threshold. So first of all, if you're a startup company, you only incur the costs, and then you probably have very little sales, or at the beginning you don't have any sales, but you have lots of costs, like you buy equipment, you pay for like services that incur VAT. Then it might be beneficial for you to register and claim those VAT back, just to aid the cash flow. So yes, you can do that at the beginning of the startup phase, even if you don't have any sales. And the other scenario is if you are earning still under the threshold, but it's approaching the threshold, like your business is growing really well, then you might need to register VAT at this point, just in case your business is above the threshold very soon. And then if you register late, then as you be called by HMRC, they will get an investigation or even get a penalty on it. So in that case, probably for the safe sake, then you register VAT. And other scenario is you want to pretend to be big, like for certain services, like say accountancy fee. Even perhaps if you see someone provide a service and they're not charged VAT, and definitely they are not earning above the threshold. But if they do, it is likely perhaps they are not they haven't reached a threshold yet, but perhaps it is perceived that they are big. So for any type of services or products, yeah, if that's something important for you to be perceived as a big, then it's probably better for you to register VAT. Okay, so register or not, ask yourself these questions. First of all, type of services or products, and secondly, the threshold, and thirdly, if you are under the threshold, you need to consider if there's a benefit for you to register VAT or not. Of course, once registered, well, people asking how much does it cost to register VAT. Of course, for registration itself, if you're comfortable with filling the form online and everything, you can do filling a form, filling the information properly, then the registration, sending the form alone, it doesn't cost you anything. But if you want more reassurance and ask a professional to do it, or perhaps your accountant will cover it in their monthly fee as well, so you can ask them to do it. And then once registered, what will happen is on quarterly basis, you will need to declare how much VAT you need to pay. So basically, if your VAT number is confirmed, you will have to invoice. If you do send invoice to customers, you will need to charge 20% of VAT on top of what your products or services worth. So 20% on top of it. And then, but then you also, the same time, if you have done any purchases that you paid VAT to your suppliers, you also need to keep their VAT invoice in order to claim those VAT back. So one side you charge a customer VAT that's sitting in your bank account, but these are ready to go to the taxman. The other side you pay the VAT to your suppliers. These are the things you can claim back. So at the end of the quarter, you just pay the net amount of VAT to HMRC. So that's it declared by the quarterly VAT return. So basically, that's a basic duty. Of course, for very rare cases, if you qualify for being on an annual basis, then you only need to submit a VAT once a year. But that doesn't mean you only pay VAT once a year. If you're on annual basis, you will need to still pay quarterly. That's based on the estimation of how much VAT you will pay at the end of the year. So you just pay the quarterly installment, and when you submit annual VAT, then you will make adjustment on that. Okay, so these are some basic duties. Of course, for record keeping sake, you will need to keep all the VAT records, like your VAT certificate, your invoices, VAT receipts, VAT invoices from your suppliers, and of course, for your invoice to your customer, you charge VAT, you also need to have them as well. So record keeping can be more strict when you are VAT registered. Okay. For some of our clients, say they are say IT consultants, and they register the VAT, but then they have very little expenses. They have very little expenses that they pay the VAT, and they have very little to claim. So for this instance, if of course when they are registered VAT, they might find a lot of money. They cannot really claim anything. So at this instant, for this sort of scenario, one thing might be beneficial for them is they register on flat rate scheme. So that's for the businesses that their expenses are minimum. And what they do is you only pay a fixed percentage to the taxman every quarter on your VAT inclusive invoice. Say, for instance, if you invoice £10,000 worth of service, and including VAT, that's 12,000, So that's including VAT. And then what you do if you're on a flat rate scheme, so you only pay a fixed percentage. It can be like 14% of that 12,000 or like 11%. So it depends on the type of services you offer. And that's probably you get some difference. You benefit from the difference of the actual VAT rate and the flat rate. So if you are in that kind of scenario, then it might be beneficial for you to do it. And also from April this year, something to watch out for is if you are like really have very little expenses. There's one scenario like you have to pay whatever services you offer. You have to pay like 16.5% if you're on flat rate scheme. So do watch out for that. That's something new from April this year. So that's something, some sort of scenario that you can use to take advantage of the VAT, and also just to save your time as well, because on flat rate scheme you don't have to record the expenses. You cannot reclaim the expenses, like VAT on expenditures. So somehow it saves your life. Of course, downside is you cannot claim the VAT on the expenditures unless you have the capital item that is more than £2,000. Okay, so that's one scenario. And some other scenario, like some of the clients, they sell goods or services to like EU country or foreign country. So how does that work? I think I covered this in detail in one of my Pick My Brain video, but just to briefly say, first of all, if that's B2B or B2C. So if you provide B2C, then if the client is in the EU country, then you still have to charge 20% of UK VAT to your customer. But if you're B2B and your customer in any EU country has registered VAT, then you will not charge VAT to your customer. So that's something. So for more details, just refer back to one of my Pick My Brain theory about VAT to EU customers. But if that's outside EU, that's outside the scope, so you don't charge VAT to the customer outside EU. So that's some common scenario that's recurred to my clients. And finally, actually something worth mentioning, that is investigation. Because earlier this year, I've handled quite a few cases, especially regarding VAT. Some of them it's like from the clients, perhaps even not my clients before, but I still handle their VAT investigation case. So just something worth mentioning, what can trigger investigation? Of course, I presume most of people, we want to pay the right amount of tax, get everything done properly. But there are some circumstances might trigger the VAT investigation. One thing, perhaps, if your VAT return is inconsistent, you're quite often being late. Or say one quarter you have a very big amount of liability, and the other quarter become like a big amount of claim. Then in this case, HMRC might want to have a look at your records and see what's going on with your business and really see if you are doing the right thing. Sometimes the reason of investigation can be very random, but most of the cases they are HMRC, from their perspective, they want to protect their revenue. So, of course, if you're having a very big claim, it is very likely they will, even not necessarily a full investigation, but like send you letters to ask you for certain documents. Nowadays, I think it's also for cost-efficient point of view. Because taxmen, they're also very busy. These people are very packed, like very busy. They cannot audit every single person. So what happened quite very often at the moment is we corresponding each other via email, and they will ask you certain questions about your business, and then request certain like your top, say, top 10 big invoices. So just to make sure you are doing the right thing, claim the right amount of VAT. So any money you claim from them, you have the evidence for it. So that's happened quite commonly recently. But if there is an investigation you received, first of all, don't panic. Of course, that now if you do get investigation, now the proper record keeping come into play. So if you keep all your records properly, you can pull out any VAT receipts, VAT invoices, whatever HMRC asks for, then there shouldn't be any problem. So what they're looking out for is, of course, you need to make sure you're doing the right thing, and they might give you some further advice, that because some business owners, they might not be aware of certain things, and then it's probably some good thing about getting investigation is it's an opportunity for you to ask certain questions and to make sure everything is right. So that's probably some positivities. So if you do get the investigation, first of all, don't panic. It's probably a good opportunity for you to really clarify certain questions you're not sure about, or something you're unaware of. And of course, since some sort of tips that can help you to get through the investigation and minimize the penalty if there is a mistake. That I often call it the 3 principles. First of all, helping. First of all, actually, before helping, that's actually telling. So first of all, telling them like voluntarily what's the situation of your business. If you do discover something wrong before they find out, yeah, I think sometimes you use our initiative. You think it's worth telling them, do tell them before they find out. But then with a willingness that you will put it right. And the second thing, helping, if they do come, so really help them to understand your business, help them, if there is an issue, help them to understand why this went wrong and what's going on, really. So use your initiative as well to help them to understand the business, understand how you calculate the VAT return. Yeah. So helping them make their life easier. And the third thing, that is to giving. So give them access to information. So one thing, if you do get investigation, one thing would happen is they will come, like the HMRC officer will come to your premise. They have absolutely no right to dig through your drawer or dig through your computer for the records. They have no right to do so, unless you give them permission to go through the certain pile of information. But they have no right to just grab your file and then dig this through without your permission. But what they would do is they will sit there, they will ask for certain information, and you have to give it to them. So give them whatever you have, and then really help them to get through this investigation smoothly, and also the level of cooperation, anything they will consider in the end, they probably will exempt your penalty as well if there is something goes wrong. So of course, for the level penalty, we covered, the detail has been covered in one of my previous Q&A about penalty, so you can look at the detail over there. But that's something, if you do get investigation, then 3 principles: telling, helping, and giving. These just need to remember, these are the simple principles to help you to not just go through it properly, but nail the investigation. Okay, so other things you can do, of course, it's like, say, we will always try to avoid getting the investigation at the first place. Sometimes it happens unexpectedly, but we'll try our best to avoid it. Of course, you will need what you need to do. File all your tax return or your VAT return on time. Normally, it will give you 1 month and 7 days time to prepare the certain quarterly VAT return. So for instance, the VAT return you have to submit, that's for the quarter from January to March. Then 1 month plus 7 days, that is 7th of May. So you have this sort of a time scale to submit the VAT return for that period and then pay the VAT. So make sure you do it on time and do it properly. And the second thing is really from your side, keep all your records and have all the in particular big VAT bill. Make sure you do keep them. If you do have a big VAT bill, it is likely you will have a big claim to HMRC. One thing you can probably consider just to avoid any delay for them to give you tax refund, that is tell them in advance, write to them, send them a copy of that bill, just help them to understand your business, what's going on. You have this big bill, say for instance one of the clients has a building, then they are having a big VAT bill, and then it is likely they will have a very huge amount of a VAT claim. But then tell them in advance, because that amount, about like £60,000, it is likely to trigger inquiry. So just tell them in advance to make sure to avoid any delay. And of course, if they, yes, I think most likely at the moment for businesses, for the first VAT return, for the businesses hasn't got any sales yet, and you are having a big claim, like thousands of pounds, like 10,000, 5,000, 10,000, that level, it is likely that HMRC will send a letter to you, ask for certain information. So at this instance, do correspond with them properly, like efficiently, and get through this smoothly. Okay, of course, if you want to, avoid this at first place, first of all, submit your VAT return on time and keep your records properly. And also, if you are expecting a big amount of VAT claim, it's better. My advice is to tell them in advance. Okay, and of course, make sure there's no silly mistakes or something like that. I remember one of the clients I handled before, that was because of one mistake made by the previous accountant that triggered the investigation. But thankfully, there's no major issue. That's just a one mistake, and then after investigation, it went quite smoothly, and HMRC closed the case and gave him the money back. But then sometimes, simply avoiding some mistakes, that will avoid unnecessary hassle. Okay, so we went through some basics about VAT, your obligation, even flat rate scheme, and also investigation. So I hope you find this one useful. Of course, VAT alone is very complicated tax. There are loads of scenario, loads of scheme, and also because there are loads of industry operated differently, there will be some, say, retailer, they operate in a very different VAT scheme as opposed to like consultants. So there are a lot of details. We'll cover more in our future Q&A sessions, but if you do have any questions that is specific to your VAT situation, feel free to let me know. So if you're watching YouTube, also you can connect with me as well. I am on Facebook. I have a private Facebook group. It's called Tax Deductible Lifestyle Tribe, and I'll put a link for that group below. And of course, if you're watching on YouTube, I will also put a link there as well. So be free to request to join. Not just you can connect with me, but also you can connect with our panel of experts. So we have financial advisors and business advisors who can help you to earn more money and grow your wealth even further. Okay, and if you do have any suggestions or feedback, also please be free to comment or personal message me as well. I will be really appreciated. And if you do like this video, if you like it, thumbs up, or love it. If you love it, give me your heart. Or if you find it's really useful for your friends or colleagues, please be free to share and encourage them to subscribe to my channel as well. Okay, again, I hope you find this one useful, and I shall see you very, very soon. Bye now.